Welcome to the Fatherhood Lens podcast, a podcast for fathers by fathers. And now here's your host, Jake Brown.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Fatherhood Lens, episode 4. I'm your host, Jake Brown. I wanted to take it back almost to like the first episode where I do a solo episode. I have about 14 people that are interested in interviewing. And so we're going to have a very busy next couple months. I'm super excited to have some content for you all. But this show or this podcast was really also for me to build a community and to be able to talk about what I'm going through and, be vulnerable and be real and be honest and be transparent and share my stories and share my shortcomings to hopefully relate to other people. Because I know I've been looking to relate with others. I wanted to start by saying I really appreciate Dan in the last episode, episode 3. If you haven't checked it out, it's on Spotify and YouTube, where Dan talks about his experiences being a stepfather. It was a very, very interesting interview. Appreciate his courage and being able to talk about his experiences and treating his daughter like his daughter and not a stepdaughter. And it was super enlightening. And as a father myself, it was super relatable. And it was great to see his passion and his energy and his joy in his daughter and what she's brought to his life. Now, it's crazy. Here in Michigan, it's 80 degrees in October. But I wanted to take a second to recognize a couple of things about October that are important to me and I know are important to others as well. So it is Mental Health Awareness Month. And I know that a lot of people, especially in the last couple interviews, it's been a common theme. And then in my episode as well, therapy is super important. And I think a lot of times we don't utilize our resources enough or we don't leverage therapists enough. But as we recognize mental health awareness and as fathers, as we talk about our vulnerabilities and our anxieties, I think therapy is really good. It's also Down Syndrome Awareness Month. I had the great pleasure of volunteering for the Special Olympics, and I've worked with quite a few folks that had Down syndrome. I coached basketball for them, and it was such a humbling, amazing experience. The folks that I helped play basketball with were just absolutely incredible human beings. So I wanted to recognize Down Syndrome Awareness Month. I think that it's super important that we bring awareness to the community, to the neurodiversity community, and just make sure that there is awareness around that. As most people know, it is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. I've had the chance to talk to many breast cancer survivors and breast cancer, people in their family who have had breast cancer, and just the courage it takes to fight and the courage it takes to share their stories. Just super appreciative and humbled to have, talked to people who have gone through that journey. If you're currently going through that journey, we're thinking about you. And lastly, it's Pregnancy and Infancy Loss Month. I posted something on my Instagram and I saw it and I thought it was great to repost. And it's essentially recognizing the fathers that lost a child or a father who was involved in the miscarriage. And it's important to acknowledge their feelings too. Our next episode, I'm going to be interviewing my brother-in-law. They've had 2 miscarriages, and I can't even imagine what it's like to go through that experience. And I'm going to be interviewing my brother-in-law, and we'll be talking through his experiences. But I know losing a child is probably one of the most, if not the most, emotional things that someone can go through. So as we honor Pregnancy and Infancy Loss Month, I'm thinking about all the fathers that have lost a child, and I'm thinking of you, and my prayers go out to you. As I kind of segue into what I would like to talk about, I want to talk about 2 things. The first thing I want to talk about is, how we treat our wives during pregnancy. I want to be vulnerable about my experience. There are some things that, when I think about the journey of my wife's pregnancy, now we've gone through 2. and how the first pregnancy went and how the second pregnancy went and what I've learned from the first pregnancy. So I want to talk about that experience a little bit. And then I also want to talk about having a daughter. I know in my first episode, I talked a lot about my son, and we are so grateful to have, an older son and a younger daughter. But I want to talk about my experience being a father to a daughter as well, and some of the things that I'm going through, some of the anxieties I'm having, and some of the things I'm thinking about. So I hope you can stick with me here and listen to the next two parts of the show. So as I mentioned before, I wanted to talk about pregnancy and how, when my wife was pregnant, there are some things that, looking back, I really wish I would have maybe told myself, now that I know, telling myself, hey, Jake, you should have done this, 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 this. And I think the second pregnancy, I was a little better, but still wasn't perfect. So if you're out there and your wife is pregnant, just think about these things and consider these things. So I mentioned it in the first episode, but as men, typically we like to fix things. It's super important, and I learned this the hard way, and I regret this deeply, but I don't think I listened enough. Pregnancy can be emotional, and I think my wife just needed empathy. She just needed me to listen to her, not provide solutions to her. And I think I knew this, but regretfully, I wasn't enacting it. I wasn't listening enough. And so, if your wife is going through pregnancy right now, like I said, it could be emotional. You just need to show your partner empathy. You just need to listen to your partner. It's something that I didn't do. I think in the second pregnancy, it was a little better, but it's something I think is super important. I think I underestimated the physical and the emotional toll that my wife went through. There was a lot of fatigue, that she went through, discomfort. I can remember the different sleeping patterns, not being able to sleep on your stomach, just how uncomfortable she was. Even like when I talk about emotions, different emotions at different times, it was super real, and it wasn't something that I considered. I think it's really easy to be dismissive and say like, oh, you're just tired, or oh, it's not that bad. But man, we're not going through it. We're not going through like the physical toll of what our wives have to go through, what our partners have to go through. I think that was like the most helpless thing. It's such a helpless feeling. But regretfully, I think I didn't show her enough grace. And I'm being very vulnerable, but I think it's important. Like if you're a father and your wife is pregnant, I think it's important that you show your wife grace or your partner grace. This was a really big thing for me, and actually a lot of friends I've talked to with too. Not helping enough around the house, like thinking that your wife is not helping enough around the house. And I talked about like physical and emotional tolls. Like the physical piece is real. Like a lot of women are bedridden. A lot of women go through physical discomfort. And I think it's easy to say, oh, well, you're not helping, specifically with the nursery. It's like you get all this stuff from the baby shower, and then you have to put the crib together, and you have to hang the decorations, and even the day-to-day stuff that was difficult for my wife. I think it's easy to get those feelings of like, hey, I feel like I'm doing it all. But it's showing that grace and having that empathy and listening when she was upset or listening when she was tired was something I didn't do. And like I said, I regret it a lot. And I think it got better with the second pregnancy, but I think I needed to take more initiative. It's one of those things, it's like we're both members of this household. Like I know what needs to get done in the house. I know the trash needs to be taken out. I know the dishes need to be done. And a lot of times in the back of your head, it's like, well, my wife normally does these things, but I'm not thinking about the fact that, she's literally carrying a human life in her. I think I just needed to be reminded of that empathy piece. I commend my wife because she helped throughout her whole pregnancy. She helped around the house. She still did things. And she pushed through so many things. And she's just honestly a rock star when it comes to, like, if I have a cold, I'm like bedridden. She could not feel well and you would never know. And I think it goes back to the empathy piece, the listening piece, giving grace. It wasn't something I was good at. Honestly, it wasn't something I was good at. Now, for me, our first pregnancy was like right after the pandemic. So it was, easy to not be involved in like appointments because there was restrictions at that time. But you can make your wife or your partner feel very alone if you're skipping the appointments, or if you're out with the boys when there's an ultrasound, or, hey, I got to stay at work later when there's an ultrasound. Like, these things are important. And, you can make your partner feel really alone if you're not there, and make them feel like, hey, this isn't a priority to you. And I think what helped me and my wife was being there and being part of the process, building that connection and showing that I was committed, because I was an equal part to building this life and I'm committed to it. And it's easy to forget about that emotional connection because a lot of times the focus shifts to the baby, getting everything ready for the hospital visit, getting everything ready in the nursery. Your wife is uncomfortable, your partner's uncomfortable, but your relationship still needs attention. And I'll be the first to admit that, I forgot about some of these things. The small gestures go a long way, like hold her hand, give her that positive affirmation, give her the foot rub, let her relax, plan those date nights, let her know that you're thinking of her. And those were a lot of things that I, failed to do. It's super important to not forget about that emotional connection. Not educating myself was probably where I went wrong. And I wanted to build this community to help fathers relate to other fathers and hear experiences. And if you're going to be a father, hear other experiences. But, I wasn't really educated about pregnancy or childbirth, or even what my wife would be going through physically, mentally, emotionally. And that certainly didn't help me be able to empathize with her. It certainly didn't help me support her. And like I said, it was better on the second pregnancy, but I think it's because we went through it already in the first. And it was kind of like, okay, Jake, don't do, what happened in the first pregnancy. And I, like I said, I commend my wife because she is such a strong human being. I'm forever grateful for her. And I know that I needed to have more empathy, and I needed to educate myself and support her a little bit more. I know hormones and stress can create mood swings. So I think not taking things personally, like myself too, if my wife got upset about something, making sure that I responded with patience and not defensiveness. I think I often responded with a defensive response. And I think it's important that fathers respond with patience, because it's super important to be patient and to be empathetic during the experience. And honestly, I think with the second pregnancy, talking to my wife about my emotions actually helped. We often bottle up our feelings, whether it's about fatherhood, whether it's about finances, which is a huge thing that I like to talk about with my wife, or just the unknown. It's something that I learned through the second pregnancy, is just talk about how I'm feeling. Being open and being vulnerable actually made it calmer. It actually made me show up more calm. It made me more grounded, and it made me support her more. So I think that was super important. I think it's something that, like I said, that improved in the second pregnancy, but it's something during the first pregnancy that I have a lot of regrets. And I think, again, if you're going through this right now, lead with empathy, be there, be patient. It's going to be okay, but it's super important that you're empathetic towards your partner. One thing that, I'll share a story. One thing that is very tough as a father. We go through the pregnancy and then you're at the hospital. For our firstborn, there were some complications with the our son needed some support and he needed to go to the NICU. As a father, your whole world is on that operating table. You dream of this life with your wife and your kids, and in a moment when things get really scary, you're very helpless and you're watching what's like the most important thing to you be in the hands of someone else. I'm very thankful for the medical staff that day. They did an amazing job taking care of my wife and taking care of my son. And then even through our second pregnancy with my daughter, they just did a fantastic job. But as a father, you are so helpless. Your whole world is on that operating table. And the thought is always in the back of your mind that when things start going wrong, you start asking a lot of questions and you start having all these anxieties and these fears. And thankfully, the nurses were super calm and super just supportive, specifically to my wife and to me. And I'm very thankful for them. But I think it's a very normal feeling to be super helpless when there's not much you can do but pray and just be thankful that you have some really talented and trained people handling your whole world. Segueing into my daughter, someone I met with a long time ago, he was he lived a very tough life, very tough environment. I considered him a pretty tough guy. And he said, Jake, when you have a daughter, like when I told him, hey, my wife and I are expecting a daughter, he said, I promise you, when you look in your daughter's eyes for the first time, you're going to lose it. He's like, I'm a tough guy. Like, I've gone through this. When I looked at my daughter for the first time, I lost it. And I remember sitting there like, I'm not like always a super emotional guy. We'll see. And I had all the nerves that I had with my son, like going into the OR. And our second delivery, our daughter she didn't need any additional assistance. So the first delivery, it was essentially like, hey, here's your son. He needs this, and this. He's going to be in the NICU. And it was very rushed. We didn't get to touch him or hold him. And with her daughter, thank the Lord, everything was, she was stable and we were able to do skin to skin. And I remember the first time I looked into her eyes and I just absolutely lost it. And this guy, I'm thinking like, this guy was right, man. Like I absolutely lost it. And it was at that moment, this little girl had me wrapped around her finger. And I'm going to do everything in my power to protect her from this world. And we've had so many great moments. My daughter is one over the last year. So many just wonderful moments that I've kind of foreshadowed how the future is going to be. The other day, she had a bath and dried her off, put her in her pajamas, and we put some music on and we were dancing. And she's just looking me right in the eyes and she just gives the best hugs. I'm thinking of like 10 years from now when I'm going to be doing a daddy-daughter dance with her. You just don't want that moment to ever end. And, people always tell you, cherish the moment while it's there. And I think that's the best advice that anyone could ever give, is cherish that moment because it's not always going to be like that. And the little moments with her, dancing, and hopefully in 10 years, the moments of just going to daddy-daughter dances with her, I'll cherish those moments forever. They always say Jake, it's awesome. You have an older son, you have a younger daughter. That's like the perfect ideal scenario. And it is. It's amazing, having an older son. And, I found my daughter wants to do everything my son wants to do. He climbs up the slide, she'll climb up the slide. It doesn't matter if it's not made for a 1-year-old, she's going to do it because her big brother's doing it. And, they always say have an older son because then he can protect his younger sister. But I kind of feel like it's the opposite. I kind of feel like she's going to protect him. She's a tough son of a gun. And I think having a special needs son, like knowing that my daughter is going to be such a caring sister and that she's going to protect him. She's going to be the perfect advocate for him and the perfect protector for him. And I think she's going to be an advocate for everyone in the neurodivergent community. She has such a pure heart and a pure soul. And you're going to say, Jake, she's 1 year old. How do you know that? I just know. When I look at her, I see a mini version of my wife. And I know I'm biased, but I think she picked a pretty dang good role model to model herself after and to grow every day with and to see. And my wife is such a great mentor. And I think that my daughter is going to blossom into just such a great support partner and best friend for my son. And that makes me super proud as a dad. You know, going back to wanting to protect my daughter, I remember the first time she was very, very sick. I was home. My wife was at work. I had both the kids. And actually, our house was under construction, so we were staying in a rental. My mother-in-law was watching her like the day before and was like, honey, she's really warm. And I was like, yeah, I think she's got a fever. She's got a little touch of something, but she doesn't have any other symptoms, Just gave her Tylenol. She'll be okay. But when I was at the house with her and my son, she was turning like pale as a ghost. And she had like 104 and a half degree fever. And I was freaking out. Like I was absolutely losing it. And I was like, I don't know what to do. She started projectile vomiting everywhere. I put her in the bathtub and she just would not stop getting sick. And as a father who's never experienced this before, I was absolutely terrified. And terrified I didn't know what to do. Terrified I didn't know who to call. Terrified I didn't know if I was doing the right thing. I put her in her car seat and she's vomiting all over herself in the car seat. And I'm just a wreck at this point. My wife's at work. I call my wife and I call my mother-in-law. And I said, I don't know what to do. And of course, they're both they know what to do at all times. And I'm like, I think I'm going to call 911. I think I need to get an ambulance. I don't know what or how or why, or there's something wrong. They both said, no, Jake, you should call our pediatrician. There's an after hours pediatrician number. So I called. They said, this is likely what's happening. I would still take her to the emergency room. Thankfully by us, there's a children's emergency room that's like separate from the adult emergency room. So they only deal with kids and you don't have to wait in an emergency room with everyone else, which was amazing. And sure enough, she had exactly what the pediatrician had thought it was, which wasn't a virus. It wasn't sick. Believe it or not, it was a UTI, which as a dad, I haven't dealt with this. And I have a son who hasn't dealt with this, but I have a daughter who doesn't talk, who can't tell me what's going on. And it was the most terrifying thing in the entire world. But she was a trooper. She was a trooper through all of it. I have so many pictures of her in her little cute gown. It all just goes back to me just wanting to protect her from the world. And seeing her in the hospital room and seeing her still laugh and seeing her still be her bubbly self, although it may have not been like her super bubbly self, it just reminded me that, hey, as a father, I'm going to go through these things where I have no clue what I'm doing. I'm thankful I have an amazing partner, an amazing mother-in-law that I can lean on. At the end of the day, my daughter is going to take the bull by its horns and she's going to just fight through everything. And she is going to be just a strong human being. And I absolutely love that about her. And it's just made me, when I look at like the fatherhood lens and I look at different perspectives, it's given me a different perspective on life, having such a wonderful daughter. I want to thank everyone for tuning in today. If you haven't already, please follow my Instagram at The Fatherhood Lens. I'm on YouTube at the same handle, Facebook, and also on Spotify. So I would really appreciate, as we build this community, for you to follow, for you to share, and for you to let anybody know that could positively be impacted by joining this community, to please make sure that you are following one of those pages. And if you're ever interested in being on the show, please message me directly. Like I said, I'm super excited for the interviews we have coming up. And I'm super excited for you all to listen to different perspectives of different fathers from around the country with different perspectives. And I guarantee that we're going to continue to build this community, and you're going to be able to relate to one of these fathers on this show. And hopefully one day you can be on this show sharing your experience. I appreciate you for listening.